Hello, I'm delighted to be here today, and congratulations to ELT Forum and Tasoula Spiropoulou for this first online meeting, and thank you very much for the invitation. Today, I'm going to talk to you about EFL in preschool education. Since my expertise is in preschool teaching and also English as a foreign language, I really hope I can contribute here by discussing certain aspects of this issue from a purely academic perspective. Although I am going to talk mainly about English as a foreign language studies in preschool education, I would like to clarify that the whole argument here is about any language, the introduction of English, of any language, and not just English, because any language is a privilege. So, with this, let's see what happens in reality. English as a foreign language has been introduced to pre-primary educational contexts across Europe and beyond. And this number of people or countries who introduce English, mainly English because this is the most popular language, not for any other reason, but mainly English in pre-primary and preschool settings, is rapidly increasing. However, what is interesting here to note is that actually, EFL pedagogy for this very specialized context is undeveloped or underdeveloped for some reason. So, today, we are going to start with a couple of misconceptions because I would like people to understand that there are certain myths that carry on for ages, and it's quite important to put things in place. And then I'm going to talk about different things in preschool and EFL in Europe, according to research studies, of course. And then we are going to talk about facts and conclusions at the very end. To start with this, and because I would really like all of you to participate as much as possible, even though we are at a distance mode here, I would like you to go to menti.com, either from your mobile or from your laptop, whatever is more convenient to you, and use this code 727315. So if you go there, a minute, you have some questions. The first question is whether you think that children learn foreign languages quickly and effortlessly. So I'm waiting for your feedback here, your opinion. Okay, so I can see different opinions. I think that most of you think that this is true, but there are some people who are more skeptical, so they say it's debatable. Let's see, I'd like as many of you as possible to participate in this because it's quite important to realize actually the ramifications of such statements. Okay. Okay, so most of you think that this is actually true. That's very interesting, actually. Okay, we're going to talk about it, obviously. Now I'd like you to go to the next question. Again, with the same code. So the earlier a foreign language is introduced in school programs, the greater the likelihood of success in learning. So most of you think that it's actually true. Okay, I'm waiting for some of you to. participate as well. Okay. Still, the answer is mainly true. Okay, still true, you think. Okay. Thank you very much for these responses. That will make my talk much more interesting, I hope. So we will start. These were the two questions, obviously. So let's start with the first one. Now, the whole idea that children learn foreign languages quickly and easily actually comes from the fact that people think there is a superiority of a child as a learner. We think that children's brains are more flexible and there is a window of opportunity that we can take advantage of, and so that they can learn languages effortlessly. And yes, children are thought to be like sponges, some of you already mentioned that, and can absorb language presented to them almost with no effort. But I'd like your attention on this second part, almost effortlessly. It takes effort, and it takes a lot of different conditions, such as providing children with continuous exposure of the right kind. So it's not that they just learn effortlessly. You need to repeat, revise, recast. You need to give them as much exposure as possible. And this kind of exposure needs to be quite appropriate, because otherwise, actually, and this is true, that otherwise, the teacher, if the teacher is not aware of the pedagogy appropriate for this group, then the opportunity that we have here may be forever missed. Why I'm saying all this? Because people sometimes think that teaching early language learners is an easy job. I've actually heard this, and I was laughing, to be honest. They said, well, you don't really need much language in order to teach the preschoolers or early foreign language learners, because all you need to do is just teach them ABC. But actually, this is not true. This is far from the truth. And to be completely honest, ABC is probably the last thing you need to teach, okay? So teaching young learners is a genuinely difficult job. Young learners, and especially preschoolers, are restless by nature. So you can't keep their interest. They lose their interest immediately. And teachers need to know the pedagogical principles in order to find ways of talking to the children's minds and touching their hearts. It's not an easy job. They need to be talented, very creative, imaginative, inventive, so as to keep the children's mind alive. So, the second misconception now, and I think this is maybe a bit more important even, but builds on from the previous one. The earlier a foreign language is introduced into school programs, the greater the likelihood of success in learning. Okay. There are researchers, and we have a series of studies that argue that earlier, if children begin earlier, then the better the outcomes will be. And there is also only a consensus in this when it comes to pronunciation and listening skills, not for the rest of the skills, okay? But results have also shown that if you start late, but you have continuous input, you will catch up with those who began earlier and had instruction only for a couple of hours. So the opportunities for learning, and we're talking about context, both inside and outside of the classroom, motivation to learn, individual differences, and aptitude are characteristics that actually affect later success. Now, let's go now to the European findings. Okay, the studies that we have from Europe and what's happening there. European reports on foreign language learning have said that in an enlarged multilingual Europe, learning foreign languages from a very young age allows us to discover other cultures and better prepare for occupational mobility. So we have two issues here. The first one is the benefits that the kids will get if they are exposed to language learning from an early age when it comes to being familiarized with other cultures or having motivation. And the second is that, yes, probably for their future, their professional future, this will be very important. However, the European reports again state, and are very careful in this, that offering another language at an early age is not inherently advantageous, but can only be effective if teachers are trained to work with very young children, very important parameter, classes are small enough, the learning material is adequate, and sufficient time is allotted to the curriculum. So we can't really have all these perks without conditions. No change, non-educational reform can actually be unconditional, okay? And it is actually true that foreign language introduction to pre-primary and preschool settings in Europe is in line with all these principles of plurilingualism and multilingualism, which is very important, okay? This is the aim of Europe, generally, to be multicultural, multilingual, and plurilingual. However, you will notice from the studies I'm going to share with you now that there is an enormous variety of implementation, both in state and primary schools, because this happens both to state, but also to primary schools. And the language-related outcomes actually depend on the model of the educational curriculum that this is adopted. So I'll start with Spain, because Spain is the country that has put the most intense efforts in doing this, okay, in introducing another language, English in this case, in preschool settings. They started around 2005 when they introduced English at the age of 5. This is a compulsory mode, of course. And since 2007, EFL is introduced at ages 3 and 4, so even earlier than 5. The aim of their curriculum, the aim of doing this, of introducing this, is to develop children's positive attitudes towards foreign languages and cultures. The exposure they have is 30 minutes twice a week for 3 years old, and for 4 and 5-year-olds, 45 minutes twice a week. The methodology is a natural way, okay, a natural way of learning. So they introduce English through routines, functional communicative activities, songs, greetings, short stories, this kind of methodology. The teacher who teaches English in Spain in preschool settings is the EFL teacher. And actually, according to studies that we have so far, okay, teachers are very positive. They regard this experience as very fruitful, and they think that actually the ideal age is age 3 for learners to start. So they are very optimistic. Now, this is the context in Spain. Very close to us, in Cyprus, we have a large study done in 2015 by Professor Eurydice, the PROCLI project, which involves 550 children, okay? So the onset age there in Cyprus since 2010 is pre-primary education, okay? And the aim is to have a holistic development. This, I think, is a very important point, because apart from being a creative process, when you start learning anything in preschool education, we need to understand that introducing a language in preschool settings goes beyond language benefits, okay? If we want to start, let's say, English because children will be more proficient very quickly, or even more quickly than they are now, then we are missing the whole point. We can abandon the whole, effort altogether. Any country that conceives this as a possibility. In order to be proficient as early as possible, you need huge amount of inputs, not like 2 or 3 hours a week. But it's the other things that come into play. cognitive benefits. I'm going to talk to you about them in a second. Cognitive benefits, affective benefits, social benefits, cultural benefits. Okay, so there are many things that come into play. And Cyprus actually acknowledges that and says the aim is for the holistic development of the children to introduce English as well, so that they develop positive attitudes and positive attitudes also not only to languages, but also to cultures, to other cultures. And of course, this does prepare them as well for later formal education in English. The exposure here is 30 minutes twice a week. They start with shorter sessions, like 2-3 times weekly for 10 minutes. Then they move on to 20 to 30 minutes. And the methodology is more or less the same. You will notice that generally. Routines, songs, greetings. So they don't treat English as a separate subject, because this would be unheard of. Okay, this is completely messing with the curriculum. And they also introduce something quite interesting, CLIL showers. So they use CLIL in kindergarten, in preschool settings, for some minutes throughout their week, their school week, you know, with different subjects. The teacher there is a pre-primary teacher with a very high level of English language proficiency. And as you can see from the studies that are being done here, we have positive attitudes towards language learning, multilingual awareness that seems to develop with this, and we also have positive impact on certain cognitive abilities. This is very important. Now, let's move on from Cyprus. I'll take you to Slovenia now. Sorry, doesn't work. And I will say that Slovenia is also one of the countries that have introduced English at a very early stage for some time now. So there is a very impressive project because their effort started around the 90s really, but there is a very important project in the National Education Institute in Slovenia that you can see here on your screen, which lasted 7 years and started in 2008, finished in 2015. They describe the situation and how they introduce English to preschool settings. The aim there is for children to comprehend English as a means of communication through everyday things, through the everyday school activities that they have. The exposure is larger there, so they have English either every day for some minutes or at least 3 times a week. The methodology is done, again, they introduce English through free play, daily routines, guided activities, and also they involve as well some CLIL projects. And the teacher there is the EFL teacher, but in cooperation with preschool educators. Now, some preliminary results from this study show increased motivation from the part of the students, a sense of pluralism, intercultural awareness, but also socialization. Now, Edelengos et al. Have a great review on what's happening in Europe in preschool settings, and they have come up to the conclusion that early start in languages, any languages, actually creates an advantage, provided that there is supportive environment and continuity between educational sectors. So an early start in language, and this is actually quite true, develops motivation and positive attitude towards languages, instills values of any language in the classroom. I think this is a very important point, okay? It's important that we instill value of any language, not just our language, I mean, in the classroom. It helps in raising language awareness and develops language strategies and provides ways of countering negative effects of low socioeconomic status. This is an important point, but it takes a whole presentation to go through this. The fact is that it creates a sense of equality across educational sectors. Now, coming to, let's say, the conclusions of this, we need to see what are the benefits, but also what are the challenges when a country introduces this kind of innovations, let's say. The benefits, and I think it's important to see that, is the holistic approach to learning, not teaching, learning. By holistic approach, obviously, we mean all the other things, affective, sociocultural, cognitive gains, all these that are important. And I have to say, although we don't have systematic evidence on the long-term effects of the onset age, because it's anyway too early for this, none of this research implies in any way that early language learning and exposure could be detrimental. Okay, so we start with this. One of the things that needs to be emphasized is that EFL is not just a foreign language, but it's another skill, okay, not just a language skill. And advantages of learning language early actually relate to pedagogical, but also cognitive benefits that accompany. Okay, and you can see some of them here. Affective gains, for example, Wood has found that there is a decrease of anxiety and there is an increase in motivation. Language awareness gains and metalinguistic awareness as well later on. Cognitive gains, so for example, we have found that there are different preschool's cognitive abilities such as memory, inductive learning, reasoning, spatial ability, problem solving that can be cultivated, and this also can facilitate further development of EFL as well. But I mean, most of the most important point here is not the language benefit, but mainly qualities that are being developed, such as motivation, such as respect for cultural diversity, further development of motives. These are, I think, the most substantial things. And of course, there are several challenges. These are the challenges, as you can see them here. General curriculum, the infrastructure needs to be adopted. Input, how much, amount, intensity. Methodology, how are we doing it? Through routine, free play, circle time, through CLEAL. Teacher training, the teacher factor generally is very important. Teacher training, language proficiency, and of course, cooperation between the teachers. And of course, a bank of material that is quite important to be there. So just to summarize this, because I want to show you something else as well. To clear the air, in a sense, an early start is beneficial for all the factors that you can read there. I don't need to read it for you. However, an early start by itself guarantees nothing. It needs to be accompanied by good teaching, supportive environment, continuity from one year to the next, taking children smoothly from pre-primary, primary, and from primary to secondary education. This transition issue is always a problem for many countries, Greece as well. So it's something that all countries need to take into account. In any case, however, and this is my point here, the introduction of any language, not just English, any language at preschool level impacts positively on motivation, cultivates positive attitudes to languages, fosters respect and intercultural sensitivity, develops cognitive abilities, and contributes to the holistic and not just additive approach of learning at this age. For this reason, for these reasons that I mentioned before, it is a pedagogically solid step. The things that we need to consider when any country starts this is what is the aim of learning, English and how English is viewed, if we're talking about English, what are the major principles behind designing materials for this age group, and the central role, as I said, of teachers, learning, training, language proficiency, cooperation. So as a final thought, when implementing initiatives, a baseline evaluation should take place. Designing the aim, the context, the material, the training are key factors for any kind of sustainability. Then any initiative needs to be piloted first. So we monitor effects, and of course this has been done in cooperation. This needs to be done, in cooperation with universities. We also need to understand the nature and eventual outcomes of different models of language education. And we urgently need an actual model of processes of learning, not just some good practices or just some sample tasks for preschoolers, okay? This is all not to say that they're not language data. or language benefits. There are vocabulary, metalinguistic awareness, different others, but this is not the focus of what I think is most important, okay? So I'd like you now again to go to Menti and use the code, a different code, 538710, and I would like us together to create something. So give me 1 second. Okay, so here it is. Please use this code here. And I would like you to give me keywords for EFL in preschool settings. Any keywords that come to mind. Okay. This is really interesting. Important conditions, yes, of course. Mm-hmm. Games, of course, holistic learning, yes. Stories, motivation, excellent. Supportive environment, great. Excellent. Games is I like the fact that you like games and you think that this is the most important part. It is actually. So, thank you very much. This is lovely. It looks lovely. I actually took a picture of it now. So I'd like to just finish off with a final note here. And my final note is that the most important thing that we need to instill in the children's minds and hearts, if we introduce any language at preschool level, is love for this language, love for education in general. And one thing that you need to know is that not everything that counts can be counted, especially in these early settings, and not everything that can be counted counts again in these very early settings. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope this is food for thought for everybody. And I hope I will see you again in the near future. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your comments right here in the chat. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to address all of them now, but I see that most of you agreed with what we've discussed. So I'm quite happy that you agree with this, and I hope that you find the presentation useful.